So we've got this cave painter in Lascaux making this image 18,000 years ago, and we want to know, well, have they made art? And Levinson's answer is, well, look, what we have to do is see if prior to the time that they created this, if someone else had made a piece of art that they also intended to be regarded in at least one of the ways that the person who made this thing intended for it to be regarded. So you might think, well, gosh, let's suppose that the person who made this intended, at least partly, that people regard how skillfully the appearance of the lines on the cave imitate the appearances of bulls out on the savannah. If we go back another 10,000 years to 25,000 BC, we've got this artifact that was created by humans, the so-called Venus of Brassampuis. It's clearly, well, it's someone's head that's been sculpted out of ivory, a tusk of some animal or another. And here you might suppose, oh, okay, so 10,000 years before the person painted these things in the cave in Lascaux, someone also had already sculpted this head. And you might think, well, the person who sculpted this head intended, at least in part, that people appreciate how well it imitates the appearance of a human head. So it turns out that, yes, someone 10,000 years before the cave paintings in Lascaux had already intended that something that they made be regarded in terms of how well it imitated the appearance of something else. So, okay, we can count those cave paintings in Lascaux as artworks. So why can we count this sculpture as an artwork? Well, we want to know, well, okay, well, did sometime in the past, before this was created, did somebody also create something that they intended to be regarded in terms of, say, for example, how well it imitated the appearance of something else? Well, you can go back around the same time someone else had created what's the so-called Venus of Willendorf, and, well, gosh, there we go. It looks like that is also trying to imitate the appearance of a human. If we go back even farther in time, another, 10 or 15,000 years to 38,000 BC, we've got this sculpture. It's called the Lion Man, and it seems to be something that was created by a human. And we might suppose, well, gosh, that person seems that they intended that people appreciate the way in which it imitates the appearance of, well, some sort of like lion man hybrid. But the intention that you appreciate its imitative form is already there. So, gosh, I guess these things that come after it that also are intended to be regarded in that way, well, those also count as art. All right, so why does that thing count as art? Well, Levinson suggests, look, you just have to keep going backwards and backwards in time, and eventually you'll come to something called the artwork, some sort of artwork where, that was the original artwork that some human created and intended to be regarded in a certain way, and that's kicked off this whole historical progression of other things that people had proprietary rights over, and they also intended to be regarded in at least some of the same ways that original artwork was also intended to be regarded. What that artwork is, no one knows. It's lost to the mist of time. But that's how we can account for all of these other things that came afterwards. They all count as art because they were all intended to be regarded in at least one way or another, in one of the ways that thing was intended to be regarded. And so everything else that comes afterwards also is intended to be regarded in some of the ways that some of the stuff that came before it was intended to be regarded, but it's also intended to be regarded in new and different ways, which gives rise to the great panoply and diversity of art that we see today. It all arises from that original artwork. That's Levinson's